Hello and welcome. Today we have a nasty 48RE we got to tear down and inspect. This is out of a 2006 Dodge 2500 HD with a 5.9 Cummins diesel, and this truck has over 300,000 miles on it, and it just went through an engine replacement. Now the shop that did the engine replacement is not the same shop that brought me the transmission. Talking with the tech, apparently the shop that did the engine swap cut a lot of corners and did a lot of haphazard, half-assed work, including failing to reinstall the alignment dowels for the transmission in the engine blocks. So as a result, transmission was making all kind of noises coming from the pump and would not move in any gear range position where you should have movement. So we're going to tear into it and see what we can find and go from there. So let's get a bit closer to the bench and begin. So we have the converter with us, so I want to just take a quick look at that to see if we can learn anything. So as we zoom in on the hub, we see evidence of hard contact here between pump's drive gear and the converter hub. And you see it on both sides. So this transmission itself was rebuilt twice now, I believe. And the last rebuild took place about 2 years ago or so. And was apparently gone through completely and was otherwise functioning perfectly fine before the engine job. So like I said, we'll see what kind of damage we find once we get into it. So before you go tearing into the unit, check end play first. These things are supposed to be set up with between 34 and 84 thousandths worth of end play there in the input shaft, and this thing appears to have roughly twice that. So either it was set up that way by the previous shop that went through it, or severe damage has occurred inside the case. So yeah, we'll find out. Okay, throttle valve actuator motor assembly. This thing appears to be original, so I'm gonna have the customer replace this. Normally, I don't see these things. Normally the shop will take them off, but when they do come in, if they're original and the vehicle's got the amount of miles that this thing has on it, I recommend replacement. They're not cheap. They're about, I wanna say $400 to $450 from Chrysler, so just gotta plan for that in your budget. Okay, 10mm bolts on the extension housing, and then there's a bracket here that secures the motor to the case. Alright, come on. Whoa. Into the trough goes my socket. Alright, 13mm on the bolts holding the actuator motor to the assembly itself. And then it just comes off. I don't know if there are other makers or manufacturers of this assembly. Maybe there are. I don't know. But whenever I replace them, I buy the Chrysler parts. So, all right. So for your selector, this is Park. All right. It's a good idea to spin the shafts as well to see if there's any kind of damage. And what I'm seeing right now is when I'm spinning the input shaft, the output shaft is coming right along for the ride, and that's generally not good. So as you can see, I'm spinning it. Let me hold it. Okay. It wants to force, my hand in an attempt to rotate, but after holding it hard and fast, they appear to be independent. At first I thought they were kind of conjoined, which, like I said, should never be. Alright, let me get the rest of these extension housing bolts, then we'll take off the range position switch and selector and speed sensor, and then start getting into the rest of the case. Alright, there's one bolt way down there that I'm going to have to get when I have this thing on its side, so there's actually 2 bolts. So we got Torx 30 on the snap ring cover. So there's the extension housing to output shaft roller bearing snap ring. So take this off, then you expand the snap ring once the overdrive brake clutch is out of the way, and that will allow the extension housing to separate from the overdrive assembly. So I don't want to take chances and, you know, strip out those little Torx sockets. So I'm just going to use a hammer with an impact driver just to break them loose. I mean, you don't have to do this if you don't want. It's up to you. Okay, that's actually already loose, so at least on that one, that was not necessary. Alright, they're loose. Every once in a while, I'll get one in that's where somebody has way over torqued these things, and they will strip out. Now, this thing's absolutely disgusting. The fluid, at least the little bit you can see on the bench, appears to be kind of new. So perhaps a service was attempted at some point recently to, you know, get this thing going again. So you're gonna have a little gasket here. A new one will come in the kit. And then you're going to need a 1-inch socket for that speed sensor. So that's that thing right there. In fact, I'm going to take that off after I get through dealing with these. So Torx 30 here. These bolts are also loose. So this will be replaced. Never reuse electrical components. It's just not a good idea. You into it for tool cleaning. All right, 1/2 inch on your selector. I'm going to keep that bracket on because it makes it easier to clean the case. Okay, you're also going to have a little snap ring right here. So it's an E-clip style snap ring. Just carefully remove it. You don't want to lose it. And then you also have a seal and then a spacer. Come on now. Oh. There's a seal under there, and then you have a washer here. So the washer goes over top the little selector shaft seal. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Alright, so now we're in a position that we can go ahead and flip this thing over, get the pan off, remove the rest of these extension housing bolts and that speed sensor. Alright, this thing wants to move around on me. So 1/2 inch on all the pan bolts, and then here are those remaining extension housing bolts hiding underneath on the bottom side, hard to get to. See if I can get on this one. I'll get it started anyway. I'll just go at it with a wrench. Yeah, that'll be replaced as well. Never reuse any of your electrical or electronic components. So I'm curious to see if when we get inside the pan, get the pan off, if any of this stuff was reused. I'm going to flip it back over so we can get the extension housing off first, and then we'll go ahead and get the pan off. Alright, let's take a look at the overdrive brake frictions, see what they're looking like. Okay, it's common to see these completely burnt. So you got a little wire snap ring here. Now make sure you can actually see what the hell's going on. Alright, let's see what we got. Okay, crispy. Heavily worn and stressed. I mean, for what is a relatively fresh rebuild, these things are pretty worn out. And you see, this one's kind of coned, oblong shaped, or undulated rather. So it should be 6 and 6 here. So we got 5 and 5. So the previous builder took the stepped pressure plate and installed a standard pressure plate. And unfortunately we see that all too often where builders are taking out the 6 clutch setup and installing the 5 clutch because they want to save those for their, I guess preferred customers or maybe their own transmissions, who the hell knows. So with a 5 and 5 stack like this, you're going to have your wavy snap ring, and then you're going to have your flat snap ring. And then you're going to have the non-stepped pressure plate, which you could see, there was a massive interference fit of some sort or clearance issue here because, I mean, look at this deep ridge cut into this plate. And here you can see the other side of it. So, this friction was associated directly with this plate. So we're going to do a 6 and 6 stepped pressure plate. When you do the 6 and 6 stack up, you only install your flat snap ring, not the wavy snap ring. What a mess. Alright, to free the overdrive section from the extension housing, you're going to come with snap ring pliers here, and you're going to expand this snap ring at the 2 ends, and it should just drop right down onto the bench. Alright, this roller bearing is new from Chrysler. We're going to replace it, just given what we've seen so far. Who knows if the previous builder replaced that thing? Hard to say. Okay, you get an all new bearing kit. So this spacer selective. On my rebuild series, I walk you through the exact procedure to set your overdrive direct clearance and making sure that you install the correct spacer. Alright, so in the overdrive section here, you're going to need a special tool to basically press this hub down so that you can get both the wire snap ring here on the overdrive sun gear as well as the overdrive direct clutch snap ring free safely, because this thing's under roughly 600 pounds of pressure, maybe more, and the last thing you need is to have this thing flying back up at your face. I mean, it could seriously crack your skull if you know, it hits you directly in the head. So we'll go do that later. And this snap ring here needs to be replaced on every overhaul. Let's get that out of the way for a second. The previous engine was leaking like a sieve. So bench is a total pigsty right now of oil and fluid and whatnot. Alright, so now let's go ahead and get the case back over. Alright, that feels a little bit more normal. I'm not sure if this pan was taken off or not, but all the bolts appear to be loose. 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter will take them off, and even a 13 millimeter. That's interesting looking. So, thinking possibly a helicoil repair will need to be done there. I don't know. You know, these bolts are loose. The tech must have removed this pan at some point, or they were just never tightened. Need to get like something along the lines of somewhere between 125 and 150 inch-pounds. Come on, get on there. Ain't trying to play games with you. Oh, I got one more bolt. One more bolt. All right, now it's ready to come off. Yeah, somebody must have serviced this thing recently or something. Okay, reusable gasket. We're not going to reuse it though, for obvious reasons. Alright, so it does look like some electricals or electronics were replaced. This looks like a Rostra harness. It's not OEM. Rostra's perfectly fine. That's what I use all the time as well. So I'm wondering if the valve body itself may have been either gone through, upgraded, updated, or simply replaced. What I like to do with these transmissions is install a D&J component billet governor pressure solenoid housing with a 4L60, 4L80E electronic pressure control solenoid. And that gives you a little bit more stability line pressure wise, and you know, just improves the overall durability of the transmission. Alright, Torx 30 on these filter bolts. Alright, so your valve body to case bolts are going to be here along the perimeter, 7/16. Unless you're taking the valve body apart, don't touch any of the little Torx 30 bolts that are, you know, in the interior of the valve body. Seven sixteenths. So the D&J kit will come with its own set of bolts over here in this location. It's dimensionally different than the factory housing. Now just carefully lift up and out. Allow the parking rod assembly to come through the case, and that's it. Get your valve body assembled. All right, now that we have the case belly exposed, if you want to do case air checks, here are your feeds. So we're not going to do that today. If you want to see that done, I got numerous other teardown videos of this family of transmissions showing that done. So plastic 1-2 accumulator piston, never reuse these. So this will be kind of an omission or a mistake on the previous builder's part. I always install a Sonic's billet accumulator piston here, and same with the servo assemblies. So it's just a good idea to do. Raybestos Pro Street band. These band levers, I believe, are a 5-to-1 ratio. For the 4647 REs, they're like 3.8 to 1. You can upgrade to a 4.2, and you can upgrade to a billet lever and a billet strut, if that's what you wanted to do. The 48 REs, you really don't need, to do anything as far as the ratio is concerned. I mean, it's already good to go in that regard. So 9/16 here on the adjustment screw for the low reverse band. And you just take the whole thing right out. Okay, I'll flash the procedures for band adjustments on the screen for intermediate and low reverse. They're different based on whichever one of these units you're working on, 46, 47, 48 RE. So just keep that in mind. That's your 5/8 to 11/16. And maybe it's 3/4. Every socket I touch, it's got to stay on the bench because it is absolutely filthy. Alright, here we go. I hope that was in the shot. It's like I'm not fully paying attention to everything I'm doing here with respect to camera work. The other thing is I want to avoid touching the camera as much as possible for obvious reasons. So, band hardware, this comes out via a little plug on the front of the case. You'll see in a little bit, 1/4" square drive there. Alright, so this will not come out until we get the case empty, but this, if you want, you could take out now. It's under some spring tension. So I can get this a little bit more free of oil before we go at it. Alright, so that's what I was referring to there. So maybe we can get at that real quick while we wait for oil to drain. Okay, I had to change the battery out real quick. It was about 2 or 3 seconds from dying. So the intermediate piston is not under a ton of spring tension. However, it is also tricky to do with just bare hands, so you can use something like some sort of cupped driver. Kind of compress it with your hand, hold it in place, and then come with a screwdriver to dislodge the snap ring. And then once you have it part way out, you should be able to get it all the way out. So again, this is another area where I like to upgrade these transmissions. I like to go with Sonic's billet pistons, both here and in the low reverse. These will wear out. There we go. So here's the order, or the arrangement rather. Pretty straightforward deal. So like I said, cover, piston, none of that stuff I like to reuse. Check your bore in here, make sure that it's not heavily scored up. Make sure that that sealing ring didn't cut a groove in it. So, it's a potential hazard when it comes to these transmissions. Alright, now let's go ahead and get the pump out. take out that little plug for the band anchor pin for intermediate, 1/4 inch square drive. So a little bit of RTV on the threads when you go back with it. Alright, so there is 2 locations where you can put in a slide hammer, or I should say a couple bolts for a slide hammer. So extension housing bolts. Alright, let me get the slide hammer out and then we'll wrap it out. Alright, slide hammer makes quick work of this job. You may be able to just pry the guts forward and force the pump out that way. To be honest, I can't remember if I did that last time I worked on one of these units. So here's a selective washer. So this determines your front end play. I guess it's going to make me take the stator sealing rings off first. Hey, these sealing rings aren't that fussy. I mean, you know, it's not too difficult to install the new ones. All right, let's see how thick this one is. Looks like it's about exactly 120 thousandths of an inch. Alright, let's take a look at this pump. Got a 1/2 inch on these bolts. 1mm. Socket. Stay put, damn it. All right. You got 6 of these bolts. Alright, so note the orientation of the drive gear and torque converter engagement tags. Okay, there is a dot, faces you, faces up. But the main thing is you have a narrow bevel here, or a narrow face, and you have a wide face. And the wide face faces front toward the torque converter. Jesus. These gears may have been replaced at the time of overhaul. They actually look in really decent shape. I mean, you know, light scoring, what I would attribute to normal wear. To be honest, I'm not sure how many miles are on this transmission since the last rebuild. I gotta check with the customer. It's the working surface. So you always want to check all your surfaces for excessive wear or scoring. At first glance, this pump body looks decent. There is a perimeter O-ring. See if we can get that off real quick. So we'll have to check clearance. I'm not going to do that now. Gotta wait till everything's all cleaned off. But at first glance, the body and the gears appear to be okay. Appear to be. Okay, let's look at the stator. So you have your torque converter clutch sealing ring here. Again, you know, light to normal wear. Check in here. Make sure that input shaft sealing ring grooves have not cut grooves into the inner diameter of the stator. I don't know if this bushing was replaced or not. I mean, regardless, when we go back with it, it'll get a new bushing, but journal appears to be okay. The body itself appears to be okay, you know, the structure. Okay, you have 3 little balls here. It indicates it's a lockup application, or, you know, that pump's designed to mate to a lockup torque converter with a clutch in it. Alright, drums. So you got your front clutch and your rear clutch, aka your direct clutch and your forward clutch. Alright, so the band does have some signs of heat. You know, saw some slippage maybe. You can see it here. This is a, you know, factory style flex band. You can buy rigid bands for these, though they're usually not necessary. Alright, let's see what we got here. So your number 2 thrust washer for forward drum. And it's going to want to stick around. Come on. There you go. Alright, so your clutch snap ring is going to be a wavy style snap ring. Now, these direct clutches are notorious for burning up because Chrysler installed kind of an undersized slip seal in, you know, in the drum itself. So when we go back with it, all the kits come with an updated seal. It's a little bit wider. So let's see how many clutches we have in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one's heated up. And 7. So we have clutch on clutch. Not a good idea to do that. It's not what I'd recommend. So previous builder did do some prep work on the steels. We're going to put a whole new steel module. Alright, this snap ring's wavy because this acts as a timing agent to ensure a smooth handshake between when the band releases and when the direct clutch applies. If you put a flat snap ring here, you run the risk of having a tie-up on the 2-3 shift. I mean, these steels look in good shape, but you know, I want to always go back with new. New steels on all heavy-duty transmissions, and like I said, for the most part, I've been putting steel modules in all my units regardless. Okay, this has a little bit of wear here, nothing crazy. I mean, it's, you know, just visual wear, not physical. Alright, I'm gonna deal with the pipes later. So this is going to be selective. So you have your spacer here, goes on the snout of the intermediate shaft, and then this thrust washer is selective, so it goes in the little pocket here. And what I'm thinking that I'm going to need to do is install a much thicker one to bring the front end plate into spec. I'm not sure why the previous builder didn't do that, but you know, whatever. You have a sealing ring here at the base, and then you have 2 turbine shaft sealing rings. The turbine shaft sealing rings are an interlock style. They're Teflon, and then this sealing ring is cast steel or cast metal, just like the stator sealing rings, and it does not want to come out. Come on. Alright. So let's take a look at the forward clutch. Forward clutch doesn't have too many issues. Okay, this is going to have a flat snap ring, and it's these snap rings that you want to use in transmissions like TH400s, 480Es for the intermediate clutch pack. Typically, you would see a 88,000 stick snap ring in the 480s and the 106,000 snap ring in the TH400. Okay, so here you got four and three as far as clutch discs and flat steels. You have your pressure plate and you have your backing plate. Okay, these look to be in decent shape. Okay, the steels were also prepped, so they were reused from previous. Not too bad. You know, we see some evidence of either particulate matter or clutch drag, so you want to manage the clearances. And I'll flash the clearances for both of these clutch packs on the screen so that you can see what you need to do and where you need to be. Alright, so in the forward drum itself, there is a Belleville plate and a snap ring. In fact, I'll take it out. My recommendation is you replace your Belleville plates. They can crack. It is something they're kind of known for. Looking for my screwdriver here. Just get in behind it, and it'll eventually come free. And then just force everything out. You're going to have a black spacer, and then you're going to have your Belleville plate underneath the spacer behind it. So like I said, this Belleville plate will be replaced, and you can take the clutch basket and separate it from the input shaft. And here's your piston. Seals feel, you know, like they're in good shape, so so far, I'm not seeing anything super obvious beyond the overdrive brake clutch getting burned up, and you know, unusual stack up in the direct. All right, now we have a snap ring holding the planet onto the intermediate shaft. Gotta dirty another pair of snap ring pliers. So we have our entire gear set here. So with the gear set assembled like this, what you're going to do is you're going to measure Geartrain endpoint. All right, the snap ring obviously has to be installed, but what you're going to do is you're going to measure the gap that exists between the base of the ring gear here and the journal on the intermediate shaft. Okay, I'll flash the specs, but basically you're looking for some sort of travel. I'm exaggerating this, but you want to see some sort of travel there. And you got a thrust washer in here, rear planet, thrust washer. Alright, we'll check that planet in a minute. Then you have your sun shell, and then your front planet. And then so you have another thrust washer here. I'll have to carefully inspect this once it's all cleaned up, but those welds, I don't know, they look a little weird to me. Okay, you're going to have a little spacer here for your front planet. So we'll check the play in the pinions. Steel 6 pinion. Check vertical and check side to side. My hands are super slippery, so. Alright, this planet appears to be in good shape. Alright, ring gear inner teeth, they look good. Okay, your sun shell is considered a hard part. Sometimes these will come in cracked, so you want to check the body. And then of course check your sun gear. Okay, these bushings, none of these bushings look like they were replaced during the last overhaul. You've got to replace bushings in these transmissions just like any other. Alright, now for the rear planet. Okay, make sure that the teeth are not chipped or worn out excessively. This planet also appears to be in decent shape. So for your intermediate shaft, you have this little band style spacer that is selective as well, and you will use that to adjust for rear gear train in play. So again, my 48RE rebuild series walks you through on every single one of these procedures I'm mentioning here, so that if you want to know exactly how to do them and what the specs need to be, you can go ahead and check that video out. It will give you everything you need to know, or that video series I should say. Okay, for your reverse drum, it's going to freewheel clockwise and lock counterclockwise. Okay, so there's a snap ring that needs to come off. And then of course you have your number 2 thrust washer here and behind the snap ring. So there's the end of it. Those are 90-degree pliers. And just spin it out. Okay, that washer is not selective. So it's common to see wear here in the inner diameter of the drum. And then a lot of times you'll see warpage on the band surface. So if this can't be cleaned up real quick with a little bit of sandpaper, then you're going to want to replace the drum. I don't know yet if I need to do that because it's filthy, but once everything's cleaned off, that's when you do your real inspection. You don't really inspect parts, in terms of making decisions on what needs to be replaced until you have an opportunity to clean everything off. So here's the band. A new band will go in. These bands are pretty resilient. I mean, there's plenty of meat left on the bones here on this one. Plenty of clutch material. It actually doesn't look too bad a shape. Some builders will not replace that band unless it's worn. Alright, so here's your rear roller assembly. One-way clutch. I tried to get it out without displacing any of the rollers or springs, but no luck. So this will be replaced as well. You never reuse one-way assemblies. There's one in the overdrive section. When we get that apart, you'll see that. Check the surface in here. Sometimes you'll see excessive scoring and wear. I believe there are repair procedures available for you to, go ahead and deal with that. All right, so your band anchor pin should just slide out. There it comes. It's for your intermediate, and then you can take the lever out. And then now you have access to the little reverse servo. So you're going to have a spring retainer, a snap ring, and then your plug, and then your piston down below. And like I said, I replace all that stuff. And then don't forget your overdrive piston. And my hands are so slippery I can't even grab it. All right, let me pull some pliers out. Let me just get rid of this little reverse piston assembly here. So, not a ton of spring tension on these. And like I said, it comes out pretty easily. So here's the assembly. Like I said, the entire deal here will get replaced except for this spring here, and well, the two springs, I guess. This spring and the other cover spring, you'll put those back in. Okay, check the bore. Both bores, or actually all three bores, need to be nice and smooth, no scoring, nothing unusual going on. Alright, so that's the main case. So now what I need to do is clean up and then take that overdrive assembly to the press, and we'll show you how to take that apart. Now before we do that, I'm going to take out the housing for the overdrive piston. So 3/8. So it's common to see these worn. You'll see a lot of wear right here. You'll see wear in the inner diameter. Now this particular one, I could see wear. You can see like the witness marks, but I can't feel it. However, I always replace these on overhauls. Now, when you buy them in the aftermarket from places like Transtar, Transpar's Warehouse, etc., they will be made to work with RH and RE series transmissions. For the RHs, they have 2 holes here drilled for the governor feeds. They include 2 slugs that you pound into these holes for the RE series transmissions. Alright, now the case is empty. So the gasket comes in the kit. Alright, first thing I want to do is take out this roller bearing. So you got a fairly beefy snap ring here, so I'm using a little bit bigger pliers. And like I said, my hands are slippery as all hell, so but now we can go ahead and flip this whole thing upside down, and you know, we have a unobstructed area to press against. So let me do that and then we'll resume. So the tool we're going to be using is made by Adaptacase. Sorry about the glare. So you want to orient this thing so that you have access to this little wire snap ring on the sun gear, and you want the ends of the clutch snap ring somewhere in the vicinity so where you can get to them. Like you don't want it back here, for example. So position it so that you have access. Center everything underneath the ram and then start pressing down. Alright, lock up your press and make sure you can get to the little wire snap ring. Make sure there's enough room to get it out. And then the ends of the clutch snap ring are at roughly the 9 o'clock position. The ends of the wire snap ring are right there. So as previously mentioned, you always want to replace this thing. It always breaks. It is waved. So when we go back with this unit, it will get a new one. So 600 plus pounds of spring tension with this giant return spring. You really don't want to be doing this job without a suitable press. And you also want to make sure you have enough clearance to allow the spring to fully relax and you know, come out, so to speak. So let's take a look at the clutch pack. Overdrive directs are on in all gears except overdrive. Okay, so here's your backing plate. Friction, steel, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 frictions and 9 steels. Alright, let's go back to the bench and disassemble the rest of it. Alright, so for your hub, just check the splines. Check the splines in here and the structure itself. You know, make sure there's nothing, you know, like no cracking or whatever, no fracturing. All common sense stuff, really. Okay, for your pressure plate, and you gotta put it back on. This stepped portion of the plate faces the engagement splines here, engagement teeth. Okay, so this side here faces down onto the hub. Now look at that spring. Alright, so in here you're going to have your sun gear, and then on the sun gear you have your overdrive base plate, and then your overdrive bearing for the planet. So the base plate and the bearings come in a kit that you can buy from Chrysler. You always want to replace these bearing plates. They can warp over time. It's possible to say if that's original or not. If I had to guess, just, you know, wild ass guess, I would say that it was not replaced last time. And that's solely based on what I've seen so far. Like, for example, look at these bushings. These bushings were not replaced, or maybe this one was, but this one wasn't. I mean, it's hard to say. They look filthy and worn out. Alright, that took a lot longer than how it's going to appear, how it just appeared on video, because I edited out the painful part of me struggling with it. Okay, here's your overdrive planet. So you're going to do the same checks. Okay, last planet. Again, it's filthy, but it appears to be in good shape. Alright, so now you're going to have 2 wire snap rings holding the output shaft and ring gear assembly with the overdrive sprag to the clutch basket. So you also have your inner race or cam, so you can pull all that out if you want prior to getting rid of the basket. Let's check the journal, or inner race rather, or actually journal, not race. Here is your overdrive roller assembly, one-way assembly. It's a dual roller setup. Okay, they're all like this. Don't know if that was replaced either. It will be. And then you have a bearing faces in this direction when you go back with it. Alright, there's 2 bushings down there. They got to be replaced. Alright, these 2 are both the same, so don't worry about mixing them up. So check your basket itself, make sure it's not damaged, cracked, or, you know, otherwise impaired. Make sure you can reuse it. Pretty basic. Alright, now you have your ring gear, 2 output shaft, and it's held in by a snap ring. The snap ring can be pretty tough. Alright, sometimes it's just simply really in there, so I'll get it out later, but you need to get this out and separated so that you can get access to these two bushings, or at least it's much easier to do it without the ring gear basket in the way, you know, parking gear, ring gear, whatever. Alright, that is the teardown. Have the transmission completely apart, every sub-assembly except for the valve body. We'll do that later. And so, not nearly as much damage as I thought I would see, to be honest, based on the description of the symptoms. So I think between maybe excessive front end play as well as lack of bushing replacement, you know, not anything overly alarming, but those things by themselves, individually and collectively, are sufficiently concerning to, you know, make me wonder what the builder was thinking when he was going through one of these units. So anyway, once they're all parts are cleaned off, I'm going to much more thoroughly inspect every single one to see if there's anything I can, you know, spot that's otherwise, you know, a smoking gun when it comes to explaining, you know, why this transmission wasn't moving and what was going on. The other suspect is the torque converter. It's possible that torque converter is just simply shot. So if the torque converter fails, then, you know, you'll have the symptoms that was described to me. So all in all, fairly clean. I would have liked to seen some Sonex billet parts for the servos and accumulator, but, you know, not every builder is going to do that. You know, it's a competitive business, so, you know, builders are trying to get the price to where they can still make a little money, at the same time make sure that they can bring the business in the door in the first place. The other thing that I would have done is replace that Overdrive piston housing there at the rear of the case, or rear case support rather. I always replace those on overhauls, and this one is no different when it comes to these units. All right, well, as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them below. If there's anything else you want to see with respect to these transmissions, 46, 47, 48 REs, 46, 47 RH, or A518, 618, etc. I'm always doing these units, so go ahead and leave them in the comments. You know, make requests for videos, and I will make those videos as soon as I can. All right, enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks again, guys.